Hi, welcome to New Pioneer Presents. My name is Theresa Carbrey and I'm Education Director at New Pioneer Co-op. Today where New Pioneer presents Stock is the basis for outstanding soup. We've got some great ingredients here and I'm delighted to have Chef Michael Fries here with me on camera. He's the chef at New Pioneer Co-op.
Hi.
Let's take a look at what we've got for our ingredients today. Got some meat. In this case, our stocks that we're going to prepare will be beef and chicken. I guess the chicken's over here. We've got some fine quality, organically fed local beef. Among our vegetables, why we see the carrots and celery, which play a big part, and onions are part of the foundation of stock. And also for our aromatics, we have the parsley, we have fresh thyme from Fayridge Farms, and we also have some cilantro, because we're not only going to make some stock, we're going to have a little fun and show you what you can do once the stock is prepared, how easy it is to jump into a really outstanding soup. We also have leeks. We're going to prepare vichyssoise, some good potatoes. These are little tomatillas. That will be sort of a southwestern approach. And peppers and some good wine. So what are we going to do first?
I've got a whole chicken here, a free-range whole chicken. And all we're going to do to it is remove the breasts, cut the other pieces of it off. You can use them for a fry at home or out on the grill. Keep the carcass for the stock. I usually use the wings right in the stock as well. We're going to remove the leg and thigh portion first. And if you cut right down in there and then feel where the joint is, bend it back and it pops right out. Then you can just cut right through there. Do the same thing on the other side. And that pops. Good sharp knives are helpful for these. Going to do the same thing with the wing. Here it pop. Now for removing the breasts. Take the neck and the gizzards out. The neck we'll use for the stock. The gizzards you can keep if you like to fry those up or feed them to your cat or whatever you like to do with them. For removing the breast, you want to slit right down the breastbone. Then starting at the open end of the chicken, cut through like that, and then guide the knife along the bones on the inside, right along the rib cage. The flavor from the stock comes from the marrow inside the bones. As this cooks, the collagen breaks down into gelatin, and a well-made stock, once it's reduced to a certain point, can in the refrigerator turn into, well, basically chicken jello. All because of the collagen and the proteins that are in the marrow. So to get at the marrow, you want to cut it up. And enjoy it. Think about something that's making you angry when you do it. Okay, we've got that cut up. We're going to save our fryer parts. Keep the wings for the stock and the neck. Gizzards for the kitty. Next we need to worry about our vegetables. Some people will tell you to use these ends of the celery for the stock because it's a scrap and all of that. I don't do it because I found that it imparts a really bitter flavor. so I ignore it. These things are okay for me though. Just going to break it up a little bit. Now normally you're cutting vegetables on a board here that's that you just cut chicken on. You're going to want to wash and sanitize this thing, but this is all going into the same place and boiling, so there's no sanitary harm being done here. I leave the skin on the onion. It actually imparts a little bit of color to the stock.
And it won't matter because you're going to strain
It won't matter. We're straining it all out. All of this stuff, this produce is washed, of course. Break it up so the flavor can get in there. Now you notice I'm putting the vegetables in first, and that's sort of important. The carrots can be peeled or unpeeled as you wish. I like to peel them because the flavor from the skin, like the end of the celery, can be a little bit bitter. Some people like to keep it for its nutritive value, though. Now it's okay to leave the peelings on the carrot if you want. But don't ever make a stock with nothing but a big pile of peelings, because I guarantee you'll find out what I mean about that bitter flavor if you do that. Okay.
Will you use the tail ends of the carrots?
These? Yes, they're fairly harmless.
So in your guidelines for choosing the vegetables that will form the basis of your stock, you feel certain you must include onions, carrots, and celery.
Onions, carrots, and celery are absolutely essential. The minor exception to that is in a seafood stock you want to leave the carrots out because the carrots have a lot of carotene in them. They're lending to the color, and on a fish stock you want it nice and white. So you want to leave the carrots out.
Can you put in what you have on hand?
Sure, to a certain extent. Now there are some scraps that you don't want to include, again because of that bitter flavor that can show up. Bell peppers are nice to throw in there, especially if you're doing just a vegetable stock, but get the seed pod out of there because it's very bitter. Zucchini and various squashes are sometimes nice. Kind of depends on what you have on hand, but make sure you get the carrots, the onions, and the celery in there. They are really essential. Now you notice that I put the vegetables in first and I'm putting the bones down on top of that. This method that I use for making stock requires that because one of the essential components of a good stock is its clarity. And if you let everything boil around in there and jumble all over the place, you're going to get a lot of sediment floating around and that sort of thing. But if you do it this way, the bones help hold the vegetables down, everything stays nice and calm, bring it to just a simmer and no higher. You'll end up with a much clearer stock.
So you use just enough water to cover the ingredients and then a little bit more.
Right. Now we're going to add one more thing to this stock.
Okay.
Something called a sachet. Sachet d'épices.
What would you like?
Simply means purse of spices.
Here we have some thyme. Would you
We
like
have some
all of
fresh
that?
thyme. Like some of that.
And here we have parsley.
And right, just need a little bit of the parsley. The stems of parsley are okay. They're a good thing to use for this sort of thing. You can have this back.
Okay. Some garlic.
I have some garlic and some bay leaves and some peppercorns
We have
here.
some beautiful garlic.
You may find that you like to impart other flavors into your stocks. My mother likes to put rosemary in hers. Gather the whole thing up, just like a purse.
So the reason you're putting your aromatics in a little purse, a little container, is to keep them from muddying the clarity?
From getting all over the place, and basically to make them easy to remove. If you find that your stock has been simmering away and you like the aroma right where it is, pull the sachet out because it may need to cook a little bit longer. So I'll just tie this thing into a bundle, and then what I'll do, stick it right into the stock, and then tie this to the handle so you don't lose it. Being careful to keep that string away from the flame. I want to talk a little bit about beef stock as well. This we're going to be using for a very quick beef soup, sort of a southwestern style beef soup at the end. We have bones.
We're going to work with the bones for the stock.
Right. Now with a beef stock, what you're looking for is a dark, rich color and aroma. The joints have a lot more marrow in them and a lot more flavor. So your butcher can have dog bones around that you can use for these things. Big joint soup bones are great for this. And if they're too big, any butcher will cut them open for you, as has happened here. Then to get a really rich color and sort of a smoky kind of flavor to it, you want to roast these. And it's real simple to do. There's nothing to it. You put them in a pan, put them in about a 375 to 400 degree oven, and let them sit there until they're golden brown. It'll take about half an hour, perhaps an hour if they're large. You want them to get cooked all the way through.
So to toast the bones.
Right. And so here's the end result. These came out of the oven about half an hour ago. And they're golden, and as you can tell, they smell an awful lot better than just the plain raw bones. Perhaps not to a dog they wouldn't, but to us they smell much better.
All toasted.
Now, aside from that, we're gonna follow the exact same procedure.
So we have basically the same vegetables in both the chicken and the beef stock.
And the bones on top. And same thing, water just enough to cover.
So there's no salt so far.
No, there's no salt. I don't salt my stocks at all because I've found that you're going to use the stock almost every time. You're going to be using the stock in order to make something else. Some people do like to simply slurp on just some plain broth. It's good if you have a cold, that sort of thing. But mostly you're going to be using it for something else. That means you're going to be cooking it further. It means it's going to reduce. If you put salt in it now and the salt tastes great and then you let it reduce a little ways, it's going to be saltier. And you're going to lose the flavor that you thought you had. So I save the salting until the very end of the final product. I think it works a little bit better that way. Okay. So we turn this thing on. I wanted to talk a little bit about that consommé.
Yes.
While we let these things simmer, and then we have some finished stocks because obviously these things take a while to cook. So I have some already done ones. But the consommé is a classical French soup. It's a reduced, intensified, very, very clear broth, and very often done with duck, game birds, and that sort of thing, but can be done with virtually any stock. And the way it's done is you take the pre-made stock that's cold and the like meat, whether it be duck or chicken, depending on what kind of stock you have there, the very lean portions of the meat. So in the case of the chicken, you'll be using the breast, as lean as you can get. You don't want fat in a consommé, or as little as possible. You're going to puree that in a Roboku or a blender, or even chop it very fine with a knife if you need to. And some julienne of the same vegetables, or mirepoix, the carrot, onion, and celery. And a julienne of that mixed with that meat and some egg whites. You put this whole thing into the stock and heat it up very slowly. Now as it heats, and this is the really mystical part of this thing, the eggs coagulate, the meat coagulates, and it all starts to rise up to the top. And it's called a raft because of the way it floats on there. And as it rises up, it pulls all the sediment up with it. And you make a little hole in the top of it so that the heat can escape. You don't want it to boil because boiling will make the raft break up. You just want it to get nice and hot and simmer. And so that hole is there to let the heat escape. And all the sediment will come up there and you get this really, really clear like iced tea, clear kind of a stock, and a really, really rich aroma. You carefully ladle that out, strain it through cheesecloth in case there's any little tidbits of the raft or anything that gets in there. And then you can take that same thing and put it back on the stove without the raft, let it reduce a little bit further, garnish it with some wild mushrooms or some minced peppers, that sort of thing. Oh, it's wonderful.
So you never eat the meat that's part of the raft?
Nope.
It's just for flavoring?
It's just there for doing the clarifying.
Huh.
Yeah. The French are notorious for using things and then setting them aside and eating the little tasty tidbit that's left over. Okay, so we need to move on. So I'm going to dice some potatoes. The smaller you dice the potatoes for this soup, the quicker it's going to cook, because they're what take the longest to cook. Always try to keep a flat side down. Don't be trying to cut something this way where it's wobbling all around. You're liable to slip and cut yourself. So keep a flat side to the cutting board so that you don't end up hurting yourself. These off.
So the soup that we were chosen today is vichyssoise.
Right.
And vichyssoise features leeks and potatoes. And it will have as the basis
The chicken
the
stock.
very delicious chicken stock.
Right, and we have a finished chicken stock over here that's gone through all the procedures we were talking about. We strained it, we let it cool completely. We lifted the fat off at the end when it was nice and cold and it was easy to pull off. And it's got a nice amber color. I'll show it to you in just a second when we go to add it in. Would you melt this in the pan, please?
Okay. Its entirety?
Yeah, the whole thing. The classical French dishes, as you may know, do not pay very much attention to our current criteria of low fat and low cholesterol and that sort of thing. Flavor is by far the most important thing we're trying to accomplish. So, and fat is flavor.
Oh,
Everyone
fat
knows
carries
that.
the flavor. Fat is one flavor.
Everybody loves that richness. Okay, I need to move this over. Dice up an onion.
Okay.
Good technique for an onion. Do you know any good tricks for stopping from tearing up when you're cutting an onion?
Do it fast.
Do it fast is actually a good technique. If you're quick at it, that helps because you don't have
Lean back.
keep it out of your face. One important thing is don't touch your face, your eyes. Go rubbing things, because what's actually happening there is that the acids in the onion are combining with the fluid in your eyes, with your tears, and are literally making sulfuric acid, and that's why it hurts so much. So you don't want to get your hands into your face. You can tame the juices a little bit and the aromas that are getting up there by just rinsing the onion off a little bit. The water helps keep them down. Doesn't stop it completely, but it does help. Did you ever see the movie Like Water for Chocolate? Mm-hmm. Or read the book? They mention in that a technique that they use where they put half an onion on top of their head. Well, with my hat, I guess I can't do that. But
Oh, that's funny.
but the reason that this works is because when you do that, you got to keep your head upright, so your eyes aren't hovering over the product and the fumes aren't going up into your eyes. Quick coarse chop on these. Is that butter almost ready?
So halfway there.
Good, because we're almost ready here. Okay, set the leeks aside. Oh, that's plenty. I'm going to take that extra butter out.
Let me help you.
I think I got it.
Swimming in butter.
Swimming in butter, which sure does taste good, no matter what it does to your heart. All right, our temperature needs to go up a bit. All right. Oh. And we're gonna saute all of this. Got a bit more here.
So how many potatoes was that? 3 or 4?
That was 4.
So you have 4 potatoes and 2 onions.
Just 1 onion and the leeks.
Oh, the leeks, that's right.
Which we haven't cut up yet. I'm
So-
going to use the leek leaf, part of the greens, for garnish. I'll show you how to do a quick little garnish that looks really nice floating on top of the soup. The white part and the light green part there for the soup. Now you can include the whole thing. Perfectly good. Will turn the soup kind of green because of the chlorophyll in here. Sort of a pale green, not as deep as, say, a pea soup gets or anything like that. All right. As I said, the smaller you cut any of this stuff, the quicker the soup is going to cook. You need a spoon for stirring.
Okay.
Throw our leeks in there. Once it gets good and hot and covered with the butter, doesn't need to be cooked all the way through at this stage. Most of the cooking will happen as it simmers with our stock. Okay?
So why are we sauteing? Are we sauteing just to sort of bring out the...
It brings out the flavors a little faster. Here we have a completed chicken stock. Note the rich amber color. There is, I don't know if it shows on the camera, but there is a very slight amount of fat that's still there.
Hardly any, really.
Not going to be able to get off. But very little. And notice how clear or nearly clear it is. Let's see what I can put down there to sort of see the clarity there. How are we doing? Is this feeling hot? No, it's got a minute or so to go. In the meantime, we can get ready for our beef soup. I also have a few of those things. The beef one's going to be very quick, and that's one of the best things about it. All we're going to do is saute a few ingredients. Going to give this one sort of a southwest kind of flair to it. We're going to saute a few ingredients, throw the broth over it, bring it to a simmer. Presto, you got soup. Simplicity to me is fairly important in cooking. If you can't, because a great chef named Chernonsky once said, cuisine is when things taste like themselves. So you need to keep the food simple in order to taste it. When it gets lathered in cheese sauce and 600 other things, it's not food anymore. It's grub. Okay, dicing a pepper, cut it in half, pop that little seed pod out right there. That way you're using the whole pepper. Don't cut the top off and throw it away. You're wasting money. We got some nice colors here, some nice rich flavors. Food from the Southwest in Mexico, very, very vibrant. We have our pan there, great. Sounds like we're getting pretty close on this. Yes, we are. I'm going to go ahead and add the stock and let it simmer away. Now you're adding enough to cover. Right to about there. Hey, I measured right. Look at that, folks. I'm going to turn the temperature up to let that get hot a little quicker. I'm going to use the rest of our butter in this one. Any kind of oil will do. If you want to cut the fat in olive oil or a canola oil, will work just fine. You only need a little bit because there's a little bit of fat in the beef that we're going to saute in there. You want to cut these things, well, not too big, not too small. You want the color to show up, but you still want to be able to fit it in your mouth. So, want to sort of compromise there. We're going to dice all of this stuff. While that butter is melting, then we're going to saute the beef in there, throw in the vegetables, throw some stock over top of it. Bada boom, bada bing. I don't think that's the way they say it in New Mexico, though. And you have a really good, really quick soup. I have a jalapeno here. Give it some heat. When you're using when you're cutting a jalapeno or any kind of hot chili, one of the options is to wear gloves so you don't get the juice all over your hands.
If you're doing quite a few, you better.
Yeah, if you're doing several, you better, because it'll start to burn right through your fingers. Jalapenos are among the milder ones, though. I thought about bringing a habanero today, but I decided against it. Going to lose the tops of it. The hottest part of the chili is the seeds. If you want to reduce some of the heat, you remove the seeds. We better get the beef in there. And use this knife to remove the seed pod carefully.
So we turn the heat up a little?
Yes, please. The next hottest part of the chili is at the tip. This tip.
Really?
Because the reason for that is that the capsicum, the substance in chilies that makes it hot, it's measured by the Scoville units that you may have heard about. That's the oldest part of the fruit as it matures on the vine, so the capsicum is concentrated down there, but just because of gravity. And so you can lose that if you want to tame the heat. And the last thing that you do to tame heat is cook it, because a cooked chili is milder than a raw one. And that's sort of common sense when you think about it.
Well, sometimes when a recipe will call for many chilies, and you go, oh, that's way too many, what you're overlooking is that as it cooks,
it gets milder. And bear in mind that chilies are fairly interchangeable, and if you think that a dish is too hot, you don't necessarily want to reduce the number of chilies, but maybe change what the chili is. You know, if it's calling for serranos, and you think that's way too hot, switch it to a jalapeno. At least in that case, the flavor is virtually identical. Now there are some where the flavor is a bit different. The poblano has a rich smoky flavor all its own. The habanero is virtually nothing but heat.
Okay, let's roll here.
Bitterness. Okay, our vegetables. A little bit of red onion that I'm going to cut slightly differently just for some variations, for some looks. And sort of a julienne, or sometimes simply called a French cut. Fastest way to cut an onion, and it'll be a nice variation in the soup just for appearances. Okay, I have another somewhat unique fruit or vegetable, depending on what school of thought you come from. This is tomatillo, also sometimes called a tree tomato. They grow on trees. They're a citrus.
They are.
Yes, and they grow with these leaves around them.
A little husk.
A little husk that you peel off. Very rich in vitamin C. And have a citrusy, almost lime-like flavor to them.
Are they the basis for green hot sauce?
Yeah, the salsa verde that you see in the more authentic Mexican restaurants and southwestern restaurants. We're going to throw just a couple of these things in there just for their citrusy flavor and yet another texture. It's nice to get a variety of colors and flavors and textures into a soup, and even, you know, I cut the onions in a different direction to give them a little bit more variety. Stir those in, and as our beef gets brown and it's almost ready, we want to let the other items get tender there as well. Yep, we can add the stock to this now and let it simmer. As you can see, these were in those containers I was talking about freezing in. You can get just about any store. And I got a really good clear beef broth here.
So now we've blended the potatoes and leeks and onions together with the chicken stock. What's the last step here?
Going to add a little bit of half and half. If you really want to do the richness, you can do cream. However, I wouldn't recommend going to milk or 2% or anything like that. It's sort of a waste. You don't get any flavor out of that. So you see how it lightens up the color?
Mm-hmm. And now we can see that it's easy to make outstanding soups if you have a good basis of stock. Once again, I'm Theresa Carbrey for New Pioneer. My guest today has been Chef Kurt Michael Fries. Thank you for joining us for New Pioneer Presents Soups, Outstanding Soups from Stock.